This month I will be covering shows directly made, or at least helped in their creation, by Man of Action. A small group of artists turned into a fairly successful production company. Rather than choosing episodes based on popularity, or obscurity, the selection choice will be rooted in each episode using a well-known writing formula. With this I'll be able to go over the strengths of specific writing concepts, how each series adds to them, and what they mean for said series as a whole. Kicking things off, we'll start with the series that's come to be Man of Action's bestseller. While you can go to a certain other video of mine if you want the general premise for the show, for this, what's important is that by this point in the series Ben and Gwen have just discovered their grandfather was part of a secret task force that handled any threat that wasn't common to the average person on Earth. With the timing lining up to where he has an encounter with an old partner of his that wants to keep subduing aliens even after the plumbers haven't been active on Earth for years. If it wasn't obvious already, the storytelling formula I'll be covering for this month is Ghost of the Past stories. The basic idea is for an unknown character who has history with the protagonist, or someone close to them, comes into the main story looking to rely on said history to get the established character to help them with a problem. Traditionally it's that reliance that acts as a sign that the new character isn't as trustworthy as we may have initially thought, but that's not a hard and fast rule. The point of a story like this is to instill uncertainty in the audience. Be it through having the viewers question whether or not the new character legitimately has the protagonist's best interest at heart, or by showing the established character is hesitant to go against the new character. Leaving the audience to wonder how the conflict will be resolved, if at all. With the setup out of the way, I can get to the reason everyone clicked on this video.
You know this guy, Grandpa?
Well, you could say that. We used to be partners.
While Phil isn't really screaming he's evil within his first appearance, the signs are pretty clear even to children if they've seen this story from other shows. This doesn't act as a detriment to the episode as it focuses less on trying to convince the audience that he's on the Tennyson's side, and more about showing us how each character feels about Max's past as a plumber, going off of what they learned last season, and what we learned about them in that same season. The episode also has a quick enough pace that any suspicion the audience might start to build up for Phil is put on hold until the full reveal. Even with all of that praise, I still have to bring up how odd Max's subdued reaction is when he learns what Phil has been doing. Now obviously being partners doesn't mean they were close friends. At the same time he still was the person Max relied on to help keep him alive and other people safe. So you would think that learning what Phil had become would make him question the type of organization he was part of if this is what can happen to members of it, or even wonder if this was always Phil's true nature. Instead he seems pretty indifferent to the fact that it was Phil and is just worried about what he's doing. Regardless of whether or not you think this is in character for Max, it still downplays the primary reason this formula is used. Taking negative and positives into account, I have to say that the episode's handling of the trope gets a tepid pass.
With your powers, Max's experience, and my instincts, we'd be an unstoppable team. What do you think?
The show adds in their lore by having Phil's plan be to release the aliens he captured from the other dimension he and Max sent them to. Once released he finds the most influential person in the area and get them to pay him a certain fee to get rid of the creatures. This expands on what we learned in the prior episode, and plays into a lesson Ben had to learn earlier in season 1. At the same time because it's so early into the series aliens randomly showing up isn't too normal of an occurrence, so any fans watching the episode for the first time are likely to be suspicious the two aliens attack in the same time frame. Restating the obvious aside, this plot is seamlessly fit into the series as a whole, even if the show doesn't try too much to put a new spin on this formula. So it gets a more enthusiastic pass.
What about Phil?
I think there's some things about this job we're better off not knowing.
Both the other dimension, called the Null Void, and Phil to a lesser extent, do come up again in the series. Despite this being the episode that introduced them, not much is revealed about them that makes this episode a necessary watch to understand either one when they do show up later on. Then there's what we learn about the plumbers, which is less new information, and more along the line of clarifying what was brought up in the previous episode. It could be argued this serves as a lesson for the type of person Ben can become if he doesn't maintain some of his more selfless qualities, but if you've seen the series as a whole, or even just my first video, you should be aware that this isn't exactly a lesson that Ben keeps in mind later on. It's nowhere near unnecessary, but its purpose is more a bridge between more important episodes in the franchise. This leaves it at a solid pass. For next week, the series I plan on covering is probably going to need more than just a 15-second explanation, so hopefully what follows that intro is worth the wait.